Hey guys, June here with episode 8 in our series on Invention, and this will probably be the last video for a while, at least until Jagex makes some tweaks or until batch 2 comes out in June, so I have a little bit more material to talk about. So my intention in this video is to summarize all of the different things that you need to do to train Invention effectively at this point, both with what sort of things you should be breaking down for the components to make augmenters, both for people who have money to throw away and for people who are trying to do this on a budget, as well as an actual training method for what I expect will probably meet everyone's style, because not everybody can afford to do the Arret method, for example. Some people want to find a method that's more AFK, some people need something that's profitable, and some people just want something that's fast. So I'm going to cover all of that in this video, and without further ado, let's get started. To start with, we need to make augmenters for our equipment, so we need to accumulate a decent supply of the 5 components that are used to make those. The first component, which are base parts, the easiest way to get these, if you have no issue spending lots of money, are by breaking down high-level bolts and arrows, so for example Ascension bolts or Royal bolts. If you've got a big stockpile of broad arrows, those will also work as well, though they have a higher jump chance than Ascension bolts or Royal bolts. If you don't have the money to blow on high-level ranged ammunition, the White Knight shop is still a really great place to accumulate base parts. Pretty much all the weapons in the shop have a very high chance of giving base parts, and they also break down into a lot of components, so you can accumulate them very quickly at relatively low cost. The second and third components are flexible and tensile parts respectively, and these are probably the easiest of the group to obtain. If you have money to waste, you can simply break down Elder or Magic Shield bows, and if you're trying to err on the cheaper side, default to Yew or Maple Shield bows instead. The fourth part we need are enhancing components, and this is where things tend to get kind of expensive. If money's not a problem, you can break down high-level potions like Zamorak Brews or Anti-Poison Plus potions, as well as crystal flasks or regular potion flasks, and these are very quick, though they do tend to be very expensive. For an inexpensive alternative, I recommend buying molten glass, using that to make goblin light orbs and then disassembling those orbs. Because molten glass occupies a common spot on the rare drop table, there's a huge supply of it in the market at all times, and so the price is suppressed very low regardless of how high the demand is. Using this method is obviously much more time consuming since you have to go through the process of crafting all of the light orbs, but you do get a moderate amount of crafting experience as a result of that as well. The last and most difficult component to explain are powerful components. For people who are willing to waste money, any of the high-level summoning pouches such as Pack Yaks or Rune Minotaurs work really well, including their scrolls, as well as high-level runes like Soul Runes. If you're trying to do the inexpensive method, powerful components are probably the most difficult to accumulate. Some choices include high-level talismans. For example, death talismans you can purchase on the Grand Exchange for about 1k still. Even high-level talismans have a moderate junk chance compared to some of the expensive options, but they do reduce your overall cost pretty considerably. Battle stabs are another choice, and though they have a pretty sizable junk chance, they also give you several more components than many other items per disassembly, so you have a decent chance with those still. I wouldn't necessarily recommend these for most players because they tend to be kind of expensive still, but this is a great choice for Iron Men and Hardcore Iron Men. The last and probably best option for getting powerful components in a cheap and somewhat slower way is by making your own summoning pouches for disassembly. Because of the fact that there's a huge demand for summoning pouches, they're all very expensive, but the hype and the demand doesn't necessarily translate to the actual ingredients for summoning pouches because people don't want to go through all of the effort of making the pouches in order to use them for Invention. This basically means that even though summoning pouches are 2 or 3 times more expensive than they have been previously, the components for them are actually still very cheap, and you can purchase, for example, Swamp Toads and make Barker Toad pouches for just about the same cost that you would when actually training summoning, and then you can disassemble the resulting pouches for your components afterward. Just like with the orbs, this is going to take you considerably longer because you have to go through a production process before you can actually disassemble the items, but on the bright side, you do also get all of the summoning experience from making those pouches. Now that we actually have our gear augmented, we can look at the different ways of leveling it up. Here I've split it up into both attack style and what sort of thing you're aiming for in your actual training method. For melee, the fastest XP strategy is obviously the Arret method that I've talked about to no end recently in these previous videos. If you're looking for profit, you can go to either the Bandos or Zamorak God Wars dungeon. You probably want to use a tier 90 weapon and an equipment siphon instead of a tier 70 weapon to disassemble there, and generally you will make profit, though that comes a bit down to RNG because you kinda need to get chestplate and leg drops in order to make money from them, though their base drops and some of their other unique drops do sell decently as well. If you're looking to AFK with melee, the only real choice is the Abyss, and unfortunately it's very expensive as well as very crowded, so I wouldn't really recommend this method at all. You'll end up spending more money than you will at Arret simply because they don't have any drops, and you'll have to compete with pretty much everyone in the universe to try and find a world, so I would strongly recommend testing the Arid method instead if you were deciding to do the Abyss strategy. For ranged, your fastest method is cannoning dark beasts, and this can be very expensive, probably more expensive than the Arid method actually, because it's a lot more effort to pick up the loot from the dark beasts, and the loot is much less valuable. But it's also considerably more AFK because the dark beasts are a lot less dangerous than the Arid are. If you're looking to make a profit, nothing really competes with Kriara. You can actually make a royal crossbow for about 600k right now, and they're a little bit of effort to forge in a Queen Black Dragon kill, but for 600k there's no reason not to disassemble those, so you'll get a lot more experience that way than if you try to do tier 90 weapons at Kriara and siphon them instead. Just like the other God Wars dungeon bosses, whether or not you make any profit here mostly comes down to luck, but because the chestplates and legs of Armadillo are so expensive, you should generally expect to make more money than you spend. If you're looking to AFK, the best choice for ranged is Rorarius in the Ascension dungeon, and they're relatively inexpensive since you can collect the Ascension Keystone drops, and that will almost completely refund the cost of all the gear that you end up using, and since they have relatively low range defense, you can use tier 70 gear and disassemble it. They do give relatively low weapon XP, which means that the overall Invention XP here doesn't really compare well with the other places, but if you have to AFK, this is a good choice for that. For magic, your best XP choice is actually Glaciers. You do lose quite a bit of money here, but they have low enough magic defense that you can use a tier 70 weapon and disassemble it, not have to worry about using an equipment siphon and getting less XP as a result of that. If you want to make a profit, the number one choice is definitely Ganodermic Beasts, but if for some reason you don't meet the Slayer requirement, you can go to either Bandos or Zamorak God Wars dungeon, and just like with melee, you probably want to use a tier 90 weapon, and you do have to get a bit lucky with chest and leg armor in order to make a decent profit here, but in general you should expect to at least break even, if not walk away with a little bit more money than you spent. And finally, the best choice for AFKing magic is definitely Muspa. You can get considerable XP rates here. They don't really compare well with Glaciers or with any of the faster methods like cannoning Arid, but they are very, very low effort, and as long as you're using good strategies for healing, you can last here pretty much indefinitely without having to pay any attention. Soul Split should be enough to stay at full HP, but if you find that you're losing HP over time and you risk dying while you're AFKing, you can switch to Blood Spells. The passive healing effect of those is more than enough to keep you at full HP all the time, though Fire Runes are a little bit expensive right now as a result of them being used for Polypore Staves, so you'll spend a little bit extra money doing that. Thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully this video covered a more versatile way of training Invention, especially for people who don't have a lot of money to throw away. Like I said earlier, this is the last episode in the series for a little while, at least until some tweaks have been made or until Batch 2 comes out and I have more things to talk about. I definitely will be back to cover more information as it comes out. So thank you guys for following this so far, and I'll see you soon.